Hello, this is Evan. I'm here with Cameron DeFaria, better known by his stage name Rye Hill. Rye's been up to big things lately with the release of Distracted, but we're not here to just talk about that today. We're going to talk about something that's more important to Rye Hill than anything, and that's you. He wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for the love and support from all his loyal fans, just like you. So today we'd like to talk with Rye Hill about some of his favorite experiences with his fans. To get a little personal with him so that you, his fans, feel like you know your favorite artist just a little bit better. So let's get started. First of all, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to speak with the Festival Voice and your fan base today. I know that everyone's going to really appreciate the input that you have. So, yeah, thanks again. Welcome to the interview. So tell us, Rye, what have been some of your favorite experiences with your fans so far in your career?
Yeah. I started producing at the young age of 13 and started out on Reason. Prior to that, I was actually on it was like a singing show called Majors and Minors. It was on the Hub Network. So I've kind of been involved in music my whole life. But in recent years, I have taken an immense liking to DJing whenever I can. Pre-pandemic, I'd be DJing venues nearly every weekend. But I would say one of the most notable performances of my career thus far was at the Fonda Theater actually this was like 5 or 6 years ago, for a charity event put on by one of the high schools it was a high school close by to the one I went to. I went to a school called Buckley in the Valley. And it gave me an initial taste of what it feels like to be up there on stage in front of a big crowd, with your name billed on the marquee and all that, and people coming to see you. And I instantly fell in love with, tending the decks on a big stage and just having that chemistry with the people watching me. And I took that and ran with it. And ever since then, I've been looking for opportunities to DJ and to play original music as well. But, it's all about reading the room. And I just love getting to connect with people who enjoy my music. And every time that I go out and I spin, and whether it's my music or not, as long as the people are having a good time and are vibing, then I'm on cloud nine.
So what was it about the charity event that really stood out to you in terms of like fan interaction?
Yeah, I think just being able, because I was supposed to be an opener for that event, because Selection, one of my favorite collectives, their artist Lakeland was supposed to be the headliner of that event, so I got to hang out with him in the green room prior to playing, and he ended up cutting his set early, so I jumped on after him. So I kind of got his whole crowd that he brought out on top of mine. But while he was playing after my opening set, I got to go out onto the floor and literally dance and party with the people who were just listening to me up there. And so I got a really personal experience with people who came out to see me. And that's my most favorite aspect about being a DJ is breaking that fourth wall and not staying on stage, getting out into the crowd. Because I think the GA experience is like the best experience ever. A lot of people do festivals the VIP way, and that's fun and all, but the most important part of it all is the sense of community when you're on the floor and everyone's together on the dance floor. And that's what we've been missing out on during the pandemic. But that is my favorite interaction with fans, is when I can step off stage, do my set. Obviously that's my favorite thing to do in the world, but step off stage and actually be in the crowd.
Yeah, well, now that shows are coming back, maybe you can appreciate it even more after having missed it for a little while. Okay, so the next question, I'm sure you've received a lot of fan art over the years. What's been your favorite piece or most memorable piece of fan art that you've seen so far?
To be honest, okay, so the fan art I've received is not I haven't received direct fan art for my artist project. The fan art I've received, and this is probably just like not the right answer or the answer you're looking for, but it's because of like a buddy I know whose name is Aryan Khan, and in India, his father is like one of the most successful Bollywood actors. So a lot of his fan base kind of turned to the music I was making.
Okay.
So he kind of grew my fan base out in India a little bit, and they would draw like pictures of my entire friend group together. So I haven't actually received fan art for the Rye Hill project, but that is an instance that I guess is relevant to that question. But please send me fan art. I would love to see it.
Nice. Yeah. So it's like kind of indirect fan art that you get exactly. through your friend.
That's the best.
Okay. And that's cool that you have the Bollywood India connection too. That's great. So yeah, you said you really enjoy like getting out there and dancing and meeting people at your sets and stuff. So, have you ever had like an interaction that made you feel uncomfortable with someone that was like overly zealous or overexcited or something as a fan?
Not really. Everyone.
Okay. Have you ever had that fanboy moment when you're like playing a show and you see, someone you really like and kind of like you want to go say hi or something, and then you just,
Oh, totally. I mean, I've had that moment many, many times in my life.
Can you tell us about one of those then?
Yeah. This wasn't even at a show. This was a few years ago when I was working a restaurant job, like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was a host for a summer, and it was at a spot called Akasha in Culver City. And who walks in but Skrillex and his manager? And I obviously played it cool. I mean, I grew up in LA. It's like you see.
Sure.
That's what happens. But to just be within feet of one of electronic music's leading pioneers was unreal. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a major dubstep fan, but I mean, the dude branches across all genres. I mean, you can't like pin him down to one thing. So I played it professionally, but I did throw in that I produce and that I'm a big fan. And
nice.
He was appreciative, and he had
sure.
He had a great lunch.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you said you played quite a few gigs and stuff, so you get a unique perspective of the crowd when you're up on stage or in the DJ booth. So what's one of the craziest things that you've seen while you're on stage?
One of the craziest things I've seen, like in the crowd?
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be PG-13 or anything. It could be like whatever crazy stuff happens,
Yeah, man. It's all crazy. I mean, everything. every time I play,
it's a blur.
It's always. It is. I mean, and I don't even like party for every set, but still, somehow I just get lost in the hype of it all. If I'm talking about specifics, I mean, people mosh. I mean that.
Yeah, to like house music or something.
I haven't had any bras thrown at me, so.
Okay. Well, that's something to aspire to then,
That's something to aspire to, yeah. Yeah, but if it's a fun, because I DJ'd in college too, so you can imagine that.
Like house parties or?
Yeah, well, I DJ'd a lot for my fraternity when I went to USC,
okay,
where I studied music industry. But, I mean, just the nightclub crowds tend to be a little more tame, I would say. But man, those fraternity parties when I was in college got.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're in a public space, people tend to keep it a little bit more tame or whatever. In house parties, people can love it a bit more.
Yeah, but I mean, the college parties, everyone's got their shirts off. We had this thing called the atrium. I don't want to go into my fraternity. Like,
That's all right.
That's so old.
You're the short version. Shout out atrium, whoever knows what that is.
Yeah. People would take champagne bottles and spray it out the windows on the second floor. Everyone would be drenched in champagne while I'm like barely finagling this deck that's like got beer spilled on it and shit.
Yeah. Well, the show must go on. So, would you do you prefer playing for larger crowds or like more intimate shows? Like on that note, like you can compare maybe like playing at a club or playing at a house party.
Yeah. Well, I have yet to play a festival, and that's
Another thing to aspire to.
another
Maybe
thing
those
to
two
get.
will come together and you'll get the
Yeah,
bra thrown at you while you're
yeah, at a festival. That would be pretty epic. But I would say, I mean, you know, I've played it pretty consistently, the same size crowds, and I love. Well, that's not exactly true. I mean, I played for big crowds, but I've really come to like the intimate setting of just being in like, you know, like a nightclub sort of venue and just having between 50 to 200 people there, and that just feels right for me. I love having it be like that, because you really get a sense. You really get a sense of the room. You really get a sense of how everyone's feeling, what the vibe is. I mean, if you have a massive crowd, it's like it's harder to read. And
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, you know, not premeditating anything that I'm going to play. I don't want to have an idea of how the show's going to go. I want it to be completely spontaneous and completely natural. And I think that my idea of how I want my shows to be played it does best in a setting like I mentioned.
Okay. Well, can you touch on a little bit about maybe like your creative process because you said it's more spontaneous, so you maybe have a set list and then you're kind of like picking and choosing from that live depending on how the crowd's reacting, or can you like touch on that a little bit?
Totally. Yeah. So when I started DJing, I would always make sure to throw in like, you know, whether it be one of my remixes or one of my original songs, just to like give them a taste of what I do.
Well, and also see how it's played
and see
out.
how it translates exactly. But I mean, yeah, I build my set list and I keep it updated, and I have a lot of ideas that are original that I throw in there, that's how those are my testing grounds. That's how I figure out, oh, this one really hit the mark because people are really vibing to it. But I just love throwing people off guard, because if people are really vibing with, like, say you're playing like a big house set, and you got like a consistent 124 BPM going, and just like verting out of that and going into like some awesome underground hip hop, seeing how they react. I love that aha moment that I see in the crowd when like something they love but didn't expect gets thrown in, because you know you can keep the set going for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Just going, four on the floor, transition to the next four on the floor, just keeping a house beat going. But I love the switch ups. I think the artistry of DJing comes with like doing some unexpected stuff, and that's what I've come to treasure, and that's what I've come to like be proud of in my sets. Is it's you don't really know what you're gonna get. You might get some trap, you might get some future bass, you might get some, you know, techno or progressive house. Because I mean, I've produced all of those genres, but recently I've been delving into kind of just like strictly indie electronic, and that's like how I'm branding myself now. But I have a love for all of those genres.
Yeah, I watched your music video. Is that you on vocals?
Yes. So yeah, I grew up singing. I did some musical theater as a kid, and like I said, I was on that singing TV show. I also guest starred on the TV show Bones, where I had like a little singing cameo toward the end of it. Okay. And yeah, now I've been singing way more on my tracks. Even the vocal in Distracted, the new one, is me. I just, you know, I formatted it, I pitched it down, and it gave it a real Calvin Harris vibe. And that's
right. Cool. Well, yeah. Earlier you mentioned the charity show, but do you have like a standout favorite crowd that you've played for so far?
Let's see. Let me think back.
Maybe like in a certain city or a certain venue.
Yeah. I would probably say my favorite place to DJ And it wasn't just one time, it was every time. And it's called Doheny Room, and it's in West Hollywood. It's part of a big club circuit, and I've kind of hit all of them. But it's my favorite one to play, and it's just like it's on the second level of this like, you know, little boutique-y club, but it's very luxurious and nice. But every time I play there, the vibes are immaculate, and there's some of the awesome, best people I've been around. Because what I love about it is like there's the DJ booth, and then there's the bar right in front of you, and then it kind of goes like this, and then it goes like that, and then you got tables on each side. So it's like it's a fully like immersive DJ experience, because you have like the people in front of you on the main dance floor, but you look to your left and you have just like a row of tables on this side and a row of tables on that side, and people are dancing. People forget that that's why you go to clubs. You go to clubs to dance. You want to hear music, you want to dance. People go to clubs these days, and you know, I mean, they sit down and do nothing and get hammered. But that venue specifically has stood out to me because people are engaged.
Yeah, so that leads into the next question. So do you prefer to see the crowd like headbanging, going wild, or do you just kind of, because you said you play a pretty eclectic set with different genres of music that kind of lend themselves to different reactions from the audience, like you know, dancing around, or so do you prefer if like to watch the crowd going crazy, or do you kind of like just watch everyone enjoy themselves and just get their groove on?
I mean, I don't want it to be forced whatsoever, but
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious when, you know, no matter headbanging or not, whether people are having a good time and whether people are vibing with your music. It's more of an energy than it is like a visual, I would say. I think I've developed a pretty good sense of, you know, if what I'm playing isn't resonating, or if it is, I mean, you know, even a slight nod and just a look on someone's face will tell you that you're doing it right. And I've had shows where I haven't done it right. And that was kind of when I started out. And it was just an energy in the room. And it was, you know, when I was just starting out, you know, DJing and playing like these big LA clubs or whatever. And I kind of just like had my own niche. I had my own niche passion for, you know, a niche brand of music. And it was my selection days when I loved that. And that's like all I would listen to, all I would play. You know, but then I branched out a little bit. I kind of understood, you know, I guess mainstream. I understood the mainstream appeal of mainstream music. But I also found my own sound, and I've finally come into my own sound. And it also just comes with confidence. If what you're playing, if you believe in what you're playing, and if you are vibing to it, if you're not doing it as a job, and you're doing it because you love to be there, and you are listening and you are vibing, then it rubs off. It completely rubs off.
Right. So if you notice like something that comes along with more experience or whatever, if you notice kind of the dance floor starting to thin out and you want to bring people back out, do you have like a go-to track that you think works to kind of like, you know, get people pumped up and dancing?
Yes. The All Night Kaytranada edit by Chance the Rapper. And that's nice. It. Put that on. You don't even have to be a DJ. Just plug in your aux and play that song.
Right. Okay. Secrets revealed. Okay. So now I'm going to move to some more personal questions, so you can connect with your audience on a deeper level. So can you tell us like how old you are, where you're originally from, where you're living now, where you're based now?
Yeah. So I grew up in Culver City. I'm 23 years old. I went to USC. And I'm actually sitting in my brand new apartment in Santa Monica.
Nice.
That I just moved to. It's like my 5th day here, and it's a process, but you know, we're getting it furnished slowly but surely. And yeah, this is where I do a lot of my production. But my dad has a studio at my family's house in our backyard, and it's like because he's a composer engineer, and he has like this full like recording studio. plaques on the wall. He's got a sound booth, and that's where I like do my sessions with like artists I bring in. Sometimes I'll get in there to like mix and master one of my tracks, but I mean, it ultimately just starts out right here on my laptop, and I have this little shitty microphone that I use, but like I'll just do demos with that, and I'll re-record it on my dad's Neumann because he has really nice microphones. What else did you ask that I should say?
No, that answered actually, and it leads into the next question. So you come from a musical background besides your singing stuff, and then you said your dad's also a producer. So can you tell us a little bit more about your family and like were they supportive of you becoming a musician? Obviously, yes, if he's letting you use the family studio. Right?
Yeah, man. I had a guitar in my hands at the age of 4, and my dad didn't put it there. He still has a huge collection of guitars, but he didn't put it in my hands, and I went for it. And I got the bug, as you would say, and I kept with it. And I just kept, brushing out my skills. And I played in a classic rock band for like 6 years when I was in middle school. Well, actually it started when I was in 3rd grade, and we broke up when I was like 14. And right after that, I fell in love with electronic music. And ever since, it's all history.
Yeah.
I started out on Reason with a crappy PC, and I made some really embarrassing dubstep on that thing. And then I switched to Logic, and now I'm an avid Ableton user.
Cool. So you mentioned you picked up a guitar at a young age. So what's one of your fondest memories from your childhood, or like a crazy, exciting memory that you have from growing up?
Oof, this one's bad, but I don't even know what it was that made me do this. Well, I actually do know what it was. It was my rock star mentality that ultimately worked to my demise. I was like, practicing guitar on my dad's, one of his like nylon stringed guitars that he like let me keep in my room. And I take this thing, and I don't know what got into me. I took this thing and I just started smashing it on the floor, just because like I don't know, you see Hendrix do that, and you're like, that's sick. Like, I want to give it a shot. And so I really fuck up the guitar, and my dad gets pissed, to say the least. And I will never harm another guitar as long as I shall live, unless I'm on tour playing with a bunch of nice guitars, and it's
fun to watch. I mean, it's showmanship, right? But if you just do it for yourself, it kind of defeats the purpose.
It definitely defeats the purpose. I was a little kid, and I was just
well, it's a learning experience then.
Yeah.
So let's see. Were there any life-defining moments or people that impacted you as a musician? Like maybe when you're young, going to see a live show, or some artist that really impacted you and inspired you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Bloom ultimately led me to want to become a full-time producer. I've seen him 6 times at different festivals and shows, and every time I see him, it is just like absolute magic. I think he puts on the best live show out of any electronic act I've ever seen. I also think he's a great guy. I don't really get starstruck like that heavily when I see or meet people, but if I walked into a room and Harley was sitting on a couch, like, I don't know what I would do. I have no idea what I would do, what I would say. I would probably act like an idiot. But if he's out there, reach out to me. I've tried hitting him up on his socials, trying to like share my music and stuff. I think he's a genius. And also another guy that I really looked up to was Sango. I thought his beats were incredible growing up, and I got to open for him at Couture Hollywood when I was like 17, and I just like to be able to like shake hands with him and talk to him behind the booth while like he was plugging his stuff in. It's moments like those that like remind you that it's possible. You just, they totally boost your morale, those moments.
Yeah. So you said you're originally from Culver City. So can you tell us what was it like growing up there? Like, where did you hang out?
Yeah, man. Culver City today looks nothing like it did when I was a kid. And I'm young, so that just tells you how fast it grew up. My parents moved there in like 94. They had me in 97. And I went to Spanish immersion school in Culver City. It was a school called El Marino. So every subject in elementary school that I learned was in Spanish. We had like an hour of English at the end of each school day. But I established a great group of friends in that area, and I have immense love for it. And it's just funny because people used to consider it like, oh, it's like a little bit, it's like nice, but it's like a little bit ghetto. And now you go over there and you look at the place, and it looks like frickin' Beverly Hills. It's completely redone. Downtown area is just like bougie as hell. It's trendy. They got a fucking Salt and Straw. That alone will tell you how much it's changed. And a Mendocino Farms, which I love. But I think it's a great town. And I went to USC, so I didn't go that far away from home. And I'm still trying to kind of like get out of LA eventually. I want to live in New York and get into the DJ scene over there really badly. I was just there a couple weeks ago. I want to live there for like a couple years. But a lot of my friends at USC are now moving to Culver City now that it's like nice. Mm-hmm. And it's funny just because like I grew up there, and like while I was living at my parents' house, I would see people out and about like that I went to college with, and this is odd. Like this is my adult life, and I'm seeing people I went to college with, like living in this town that I grew up in. But I'm now in Santa Monica, and I'm so stoked to be here. I'm on Ocean Margarita.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. So, what was the first album you ever bought, and why did you choose that particular one?
Meteor by Linkin Park. Because I was I'm your classic white boy with angst. I really, really dug their music. They were doing different stuff. They were like a whole new brand of alternative rock. And Green Day was also up there for me. I bought Dookie at a pretty young age. But yeah, Linkin Park, they infused alternative rock with rap. They were combining genres before people were doing that. And I just think I thought that was so sick. And now here I am, and I love to combine like electronic elements with hip hop elements. I think merging genres is the best thing. Even just like little tiny elements from other.
Yeah, like samples or something. I mean, it just expands the amount of creativity and options you have when you're DJing, right? So.
Yeah, they kind of introduced me that there's no limits really to what you can make.
Cool. So, what was the first concert you went to, and how old were you?
It was the Fray. I was probably like 7, and it was a pretty funny story. I went with my mom, my buddy, and his mom. And we had pretty good seats, and I really, really dug the Fray. Again, nothing surprising, judging by my skin tone. But I loved the concert, and a really, really hammered woman who was watching next to us thought me and my friend were like 2 kids, and she started talking to my mom, and she was like, "Hey, you want to like come back and meet the band?" And we were like, "No way!" And so. What we thought would be just like, a fun night to see the Fray, it turned out to be us going backstage and.
Oh wow! Your first show, nice.
Yeah, my first ever concert.
That's special.
Going backstage to meet Isaac and the rest of the band, and I told him how much I love this music. And it was,
cool.
Yeah, it was a great first concert.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, and then what was the first festival you went to, and how do you think that impacted you?
Damn. I mean, it's a real basic answer, but I went to Coachella when I was like 15 or 16, probably 16, sophomore year of high school. And I left the weekend thinking it was the best weekend of my life, that I just peaked. And and granted, I was sober the entire time. I I maybe had drank a little bit, but I had the best time of my life, just completely stone cold sober, just enjoying the music.
Do you remember who played that year? Like one of the standout artists you saw?
Yeah.
That kind of like, because when you see a concert on a festival scale, it kind of changes things, you know? So was there any like standout performances?
I vividly remember walking out onto the polo fields and just hearing Actin' Crazy by Action Bronson playing, like, I forget what stage. She was probably like on the main stage. But I was obsessed with that song at the time. And I was like walking in to this immense, vast field of just like people with incredible vibes. And I instantly go into the crowd to see Action Bronson play his entire, what was it called? Mr. Incredible, something like that. That whole album. And it was amazing. I loved it. And the electronic act that really stood out to me that weekend was Cascade. I mean, he put on a stellar show. And Florence and the Machine. They are incredible. I want them to release a new album. They're absolutely dope. What was funny about the festival that weekend, though, is I lost my phone in the Sahara tent while watching David Guetta. And me and my friend had to catch a bus that night to go back to LAX. Because our parents wouldn't have let us go to Coachella if we didn't go to school on Monday. So we had to catch a bus from Palm Springs back to LAX, where we would then get a cab to go to my house, sleep for an hour, and go to school. But I lost my phone in the Sahara tent for David Guetta. So I was like, dude, we have to try and find it. So everyone dipped on the festival, and we went to search the Sahara tent to find no phone, waited in the lost and found line, almost missed our bus, but we made it. I still had no phone. But man, what a weekend. And I went for 2 years after that, and I haven't been since, but I'm actually going down to San Diego this weekend for Day MBS, which is a fingers crossed festival, because I write for a blog called Dancing Astronaut, and I get to interview Nora En Pure, who is one of my favorite artists right now and has been for the last few years. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm going to Outside Lands in October for its Halloween installment, which will be very fun.
Cool. So we touched on this a little bit already, but do you have any unique musical influences that played a part in the direction you decided to take? Because you said you kind of like started finding your style that you want to produce in. So
yeah, and I would have to say that is heavily my style that I've come to materialize has great influence from the likes of Rufus. I mean, can't go wrong with them. Bob Moses, Lastlings, even Chris Lake. I just saw him at the Brooklyn Mirage. Goddamn, what a show he put on. But I also infuse my own originality. I draw from there. I draw a lot from whether it be their tempos, there's some of their sound design that I find just so beautiful. I mean, obviously I don't have their patches, but and I'm not trying to mimic them in any sort of way, but it's inspiring to listen to their music. And because our music tastes shift as we age. And I was obsessed with future bass while I was a thing, and I would try to replicate it as best I could. That's why I have really popular remixes on SoundCloud. Do future bass remixes of already really popular songs. But man, I'm really hoping to make my own brand and make my own music a sound that people look up to and want to not replicate, but will inspire them to make their own stuff.
Okay, so on that note, what's one thing that you feel is unique about you or about your music or your brand that you're building?
I think what's unique about me is I have a rock background, and I have a pretty organic voice. I do have a good voice, and when I mix that together with the indie electronic production that I'm focusing on, I think that creates something that stands out from the rest of the people and the producers in my genre.
Okay, cool. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
Oh, sorry, and my guitar playing. I incorporate
and what?
And my guitar playing. I incorporate a lot of guitar solos and electronic music.
So live instrumentation.
Yeah. So when I perform again, I'll definitely have a guitar up there with me, and I'll be ripping guitar while you hear, kick drums and synthesizer.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, I think that the live element always adds a lot to the show. It's kind of like visuals for the music or something. It just it adds a whole nother element to it. So, sorry, just to repeat the question, what's one thing about you that most people don't know?
One thing about me that most people don't know. I would say one thing about me that most people don't know is that, damn. I know I have a bunch of trivial things in my head, but I'm trying to think of something momentous.
That's okay. We could move on to the next one, and maybe it'll come to you.
Okay.
So if you could give, this is also a pretty broad question too. So if you could give your fans one piece of advice about their career or their life or anything, what would it be? Life coach hat on now.
One piece of advice.
Yeah.
Would be, I mean, I'm not gonna repeat what everyone else is gonna tell you and say, like, don't give up, you got it. I mean, obviously that's a given. Like, I'm not there yet. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not giving up. And I would say one of the best things that I did recently, especially over the pandemic, during a year of a lot of social isolation, where tons of people were dealing with mental health issues, and I would say buy a fucking journal, and I would say write down every day. Not every day, whenever it hits you, whenever you're stressed out about something, whenever you're feeling a little depressed, whenever something is on your mind that you can't fix in the moment, but is occupying your mental capacity that won't let you have fun and do other things, write that shit down. Because I know for myself that if I'm all flustered or anxious about something, when I put pen to paper and I put those thoughts onto paper and write down a potential solution and like how it's going to work itself out, I can put it to rest in my head. And I don't know if that would work universally, but it works wonders for me because I'm naturally an anxious person. I take an SSR. I have anxiety and shit. It sucks. But when I write shit down in a journal, it totally clears my head. And I think it should be normalized because a lot of people won't do it because it's like, whatever. But I think it should be totally normalized. I think everyone should do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to process things that are happening in your life so you can move on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last question. Do you have anything else you want to say to the viewers or wonderful audience today, like any new releases or upcoming shows or things you have planned for the future?
Yeah. Well, my new track Distracted is out now on all platforms. I really dig it, and it's a really cool deep house little cut that I'm really proud of. And then I have another single coming out in early September. It's called Lost in My Sentiments, and it's going to feature those things that I was talking about earlier, but it's got a live vocal. It sounds like me. I didn't edit it, and it's got a really sick guitar solo that I'm really proud of, and it's a real Rufus C vibe. I'm really stoked to release that one, and it's all going to compile into an EP that I'll probably drop in probably October or November. But I've got a couple more singles coming up, and this is going to be it's going to be too late for viewers to come. But tonight, on Friday, the 6th of August, I'm playing S-Bar, which is like a new SBE nightlife venue, and I have like a little headlining set there, which will be fun. But after that, no shows right now that I can think of.
Well, you got to finish moving into the place in Santa Monica, right?
I need to finish that.
Get settled and nested in there.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Love your publication. Yeah,
that's all we have for today. But we'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk with your fan base and me. And we'd also like to thank all of you, our loyal Festival Voice audience, for allowing us to be your voice at festivals around the world. Neither Rye Hill nor the Festival Voice would be where we are without your support. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and stay tuned for more exclusive interviews and content brought to you by the Festival Voice. Thanks, Rye. Have a great day, man.
All right, Evan. Thanks.
Yep. Bye-bye.